Hey, everybody. So glad to have you with us this afternoon. I'm here with the great documentarian, comedian, internet personality, Peter Coffin. How are you doing, Peter?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. And we have so much has happened over the past week. Like, my goodness, we had an amazing conference and all kinds of stuff. I mean, wow, wow. We're all just sitting here kind of wow. I'm like exhausted, like trying to catch my breath. I think you're in a similar spot.
I not only had to catch my breath and rest probably more than I would normally, but I also had a bunch of work packed up that I had to get done very fast. So I haven't really genuinely been able to catch up in the way that I'd like to. But yeah, we were going nonstop. We did a conference, which is like frankly enough effort to tire somebody out. Like we had a large number of people show up. Our crew was, pretty big, and we were all working on. We were all, had to move things. We had to set up signs. We had to lift large crates of books. Like we all put our backs into it, and frankly, that would have been enough to tire out, I think, most people. But everybody did more than that, and you guys did even more than I did. I had to leave on Tuesday. You guys went right back up to New York and did another protest.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild. But now you are working on a documentary film about it, which I think is really cool and exciting. Do you want to tell people what you've got in the works?
Yeah, I'm really excited. We kind of wanted to. I pitched this to you like last year. We were talking about this, like, and just to let people know exactly how much effort does go into one of these events. We were talking about it like it was October. I think I initially came up with this idea and said it to you. I was like, we should try to put together a documentary that shows people the other end of doing one of these events. I mean, obviously, yes, we're really excited to get out the footage of all of the different talks and all of the different things that happen during the course of it. But like we also there's a sort of like a human side of it, and there's a lot of work that goes into this. And there's we did other things while we protested at the Victims of Communism Museum, for instance, and
Right.
and all of that stuff. It's adjacent to what people see in these finished produced pieces, these multicam shoots of these talks, and they're great. And I think that everybody should watch them. Like it's in no way like saying like we need something different. It's we need something different too. Like I think it's just good for people to understand the human element of something behind it, and that's what we're trying to put together here.
Right. Well, I think one of the ideas was that like people have no idea what goes into making these conferences. They just kind of see talks on the internet and
Yeah, they see 40-second clips that somebody steals from one of our calls, claiming that nobody comes because we have ushers, I
like,
guess.
yeah, right. I mean, it's that's silly, but a lot of work goes into these kind of conferences. And also I think that there's like a human aspect people don't really get because, like people actually, if you came to this conference, you got to hang out with Scott Ritter. You got to hang out with Peter Coffin. You got to hang out with, with Garland Nixon. And that there's like a kind of a hobnobbing social aspect. Like for the first hour or so of the conference, people were just drinking coffee and chatting, taking selfies. And it was like a really warm atmosphere in the room where all of us who have anti-imperialist views get to kind of get together and bond with each other over our opposition to the status quo and our understanding of the truth. I mean, that's really an aspect of this people don't really get to see, right? The kind of amazing feeling of community that comes out of this.
Yeah, and the word community it's an often balked at word because when we use that in the context of like today's political internet shit or like even like the community based around whatever movie or cartoon or whatever that people like, that means like market demographic. But when you say community in this context, it's people who actually physically are in a single place, who all have like-minded ideas, have similar interests. Like and when I say interests, I don't mean what they're interested in. I mean like we all have similar goals and reasons to be acting in the way that we do and doing the things that we do. And you don't really exchange ideas. Like, don't get me wrong, I like talking to people on the internet, and I have a lot of friends on the internet and stuff. But when you kind of have unlimited time to speak to people that way, like one-on-one DMs, all that kind of crap. But like if you're acting with purpose, having everybody in one place, it's infinitely more productive. You get a lot more done. People meet more people. They understand where more people are coming from. It's more useful to do if you actually have some kind of political goal of any kind.
Yeah, I mean, the conference itself, I mean, speech after speech after speech, full of hard-hitting information. I mean, we're editing the talks and getting them up, and yeah, I mean, it's really, really something special, and you kind of have to be there and see what it's about. And I'm really glad you're making this documentary. I'm still kind of a deer in the headlights here. I'm just kind of catching my breath because so after the conference, then a few of us went up to New York City to protest Tsai Ing-wen, the Taiwan president who came to the United States basically to stir up hostility to China and sell weapons. And we protested against her, and the video of me confronting her, it actually has like gone viral. It's become a big deal in China, a huge deal in China, a huge deal on TikTok and international media. Like, Chinese government accounts are sharing the video and all of this. And so that happened. And then last night we went out to protest her again with Chinese Americans, and, Sam was there, Jim was there, Sage was there. Good crew of people. And I'm very happy. But last night I did a stream when I got home, and I was just like, you could see on the stream, I was just beat because I'm still trying to catch my breath from all of this, but it's like so much has happened so dramatically. But I guess
a very short span of time too. Like, just to be frank, it's been about a week that all of this happened over the course of.
Yeah, and I will say that, and it wasn't just that. Monday, we protested against the Victims of Communism Museum, which is an anti-communist museum that's anti-China, and that was wild. You were there for that. You filmed.
Yeah, I filmed.
Yeah, like a guy. The museum was closed, but a guy from inside heard us protesting outside and came and talked to us. And then there was a guy on the street, just a local guy who was passing on his way home from work, who heard us and agreed with us, a young African-American guy. And he gave us his thumbs up and gave us his information, and he wants to get in touch. And that was a really neat conversation. And that was really neat. The next day, then Elizabeth and a few others, we went out and we protested outside the actual Summit for Democracy. And I will say it's really bizarre. This whole thing has really struck me how rigged social media is. It is completely rigged because it's like they are sitting there trying to control what people see because every so often we slip through. The protest, the live stream we did protesting the Summit for Democracy out in front of it is up to 114,000 views already, which means that somehow it slipped through. People just started watching it, right? I think it was because the summit was itself, the summit was itself actually like trending. And so we were able to they were manipulating the algorithms to make the summit trend. And so we slipped through and people saw us. But then, my confrontation with Tsai Ing-wen, this is like a big deal. It's like all over China. It's all over the news and all that. On Twitter, it's only got 200 shares. It's really, really bizarre. And it's like, how is this not everywhere? Like all these Chinese government accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers are sharing it. And yet something's up. I mean, it's really, really obviously rigged. And we now see the Twitter files. It's bizarre. It's bizarre to watch. And it's like, why does 5 people protesting the summit get hundreds of thousands of views, and then something that is a huge deal, which is an American calling out Tsai, which is it's making international headlines, and there's people, there's all kinds of stuff, and we can talk about all of that later. Why does that all of a sudden it's Twitter is able to just kind of kill that, and it's so obviously rigged. I mean, it's rigged.
Well, there's two forms of curation going on: the algorithmic curation and then the actual human curation. The algorithmic curation, I think that they have the ability to kind of, when something that maybe they don't know about starts to get some algorithmic juice, I think it probably notifies them and they start making decisions or something. I don't know. We talked about this a lot on Fault Lines. It was Monday I was on. This was actually a big topic of discussion that we went into, the Twitter files, how how, they try to pin that whole thing on conservative, like it's conservatives, just conservatives complaining. It's like, I don't care who's complaining. We have like hard proof that they manipulate what people see in a way that is different from how they claim that people see things on. Like social media is supposedly this grassroots run by the people. I retweet something because I want people to see it. Yeah. But it's not that at all. I mean, at one point it probably was, but it's probably been quite a while since it's been that.
Right. And I mean, it is just so weird because, we have this conference, this in-person conference. It's amazing. There's a lot of people there. And then, Scott Ritter, who spoke at our conference, he was banned permanently from Twitter. Like 2 days later, he was banned because I guess afterwards he went to Austin, Texas to meet with Alex Jones. And the picture of him with Alex Jones went up and then they banned him. And Scott Ritter, I mean, he was really honest in his talk. You can watch his talk on the CPI YouTube channel now. He's like, I'm a Reagan Republican, but I really want to stop World War III. I'm a former UN weapons inspector. I know how dangerous nuclear war is. And, I don't want a war with Russia. And he was there. And so he met with us. He met with, the communists or whatever. And then he got on a plane and he met with Alex Jones and he took a selfie with Alex Jones. And then they banned him from Twitter. And so it shows how much social media manipulation is going on. I mean, it is kind of unbelievable. They banned one of our speakers. We slipped through at one point in this tiny little protest we did outside the summit. I mean, I wonder if it's because we were streaming from the summit, like if that area, because the summit was like, it was probably because we were in the general area and we had like Summit for Democracy in our name. It like slipped through the algorithm.
We probably were geotagged in some way. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can kind of figure that it gets through, but you can't replicate them ever. That's the big problem.
Right. And so we got through and like over 100,000 people watch 5 people outside of the summit with bullhorns. And so then we confront like a prominent elected official. And even though it's big everywhere that they don't control in all of in all of Twitter, Facebook and all of that, like my Facebook video of it, I posted it on my personal Facebook and on my Facebook page. It's gotten like 3 shares and it's like, it's very clear that what they're doing. And it's bizarre to see how they manipulate these things. It's really, really shocking to see, but it also shows you why you need to do stuff in real life. Like IRL events need to happen because we cannot, I mean, the cyberspace stuff is such a rigged game. So that's one thing that came out of this.
People like to make fun of the idea that people might complain about how something is rigged. But like, until you experience it, there's a certain amount of people who just don't believe it. It's like with cancel culture. Like nobody was saying the words cancel culture, and then it hit more and more people, and now it's basically normal. Like people say, "Don't do cancel culture. Don't do cancel culture." It's like, well, it's something that happens, and it's gonna happen to more people. That's the other thing, And I realize that people watching this stream probably aren't going to be too shocked by anything we're saying about social platforms, censoring people, but and you could make the case that it's not censorship because you're still allowed to post it, but it's not. It's I've said it multiple times. Attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas, and if you're denied the ability to get any kind of attention, and to be frank, the people in charge are the ones who hold all the currency, so they're the ones who are able to say this gets through, this doesn't. But if you're not allowed to be heard, what's the point of talking? So do you have the freedom to speak if no one can hear it? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that's so amusing is we know a lot of people saw our summit because now they're scrambling to do another one. VJ Prashad, the degrowther, Ben Norton, the woke who wants to boycott any rally that doesn't have, pure leftist intent, one of the biggest voices condemning Rage Against the War Machine, Luna Oy, the cancel culture queen who's denounced all of us a bunch of times.
They're Marxist-Leninist.
Yeah, Marxist-Leninist, right. They are scrambling to have their own summit against the Democracy Summit, their own counter summit that they're doing. And it's an online event and they announced it. And it's like, we've been planning this for months and then we did it and it created a big splash. And so now they're scrambling to keep up with us. It's really, really funny. It's really, really funny.
Well, that's the same thing that happened with the Rage Against the War Machine rally. Like they did this event and it wasn't how they wanted it to be. So they did another one and nobody went to it. And that's what's going to happen with this one. Because
Yeah.
it's online. So it's going to be boring as hell. You
Mhm.
won't have that social element. You won't be able to walk around before the speakers start and speak with them. And also, like, where did this come from? Like I said earlier, we've been talking about this event for months. I pitched you the idea of a documentary like back in October, and you know, they just announced this thing after the Summit for Democracy itself. It's just weird.
Yeah. No, the whole thing is really, really bizarre. I mean, you know, I mean, you wonder, like, I mean, also, I mean, what's gonna their thing, the politics are gonna be lame. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, these are all the forces that are always a day late and a dollar short. You know, and you know, maybe Vijay Prashad will like condemn the Summit for Democracy because, you know, they're going to build a power plant in India and you know, growth is bad or something, you know, and
more like the Summit for Growth.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really, really interesting to see how they, you know, are scrambling to keep up with us, and also how much things are being manipulated. I mean, it's really, really bizarre. The other thing I noticed, and this is amusing. So, you know, there were, you know, Tsai Ing-wen came to New York City. And so the Center for Political Innovation, in our exhaustion from our conference, we made our way back to New York City. We ran up there, and I left a day or two earlier than I thought I was going to go up there, you know, to counter her. And, you know, there were Chinese Americans who turned out in big numbers, but the Communist Party that supposedly supports China, not there. PSL supposedly supports China, not there. Workers' World Party that supposedly supports China. The protest is like 10 blocks from their office, not there. You know, so it's just, you know, it's like some white dudes from the Center for Political Innovation and a crowd of Chinese Americans that are out there protesting. So we have our protest. And now afterwards, Taiwan media is trying to say that Chinese gangsters were hired to organize this protest. And I'm looking at this and I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, it was a crowd of Chinese Americans. I didn't know them, you know, that most of them, English was not the language they spoke very well. You know, they came on a charter bus, but I think they came from Flushing, Queens, if I'm not mistaken, because there's a huge Chinese community out there. And if they were gangsters, I think the last thing they would do, because like every TV media outlet in the world was there covering it, right? I mean, the last thing a gangster would want to do is get in front of, you know, TV cameras and be everywhere. So I really doubt that story is true. But the only source on that is Taiwan intelligence. And they say, oh, these people that were protesting, it was gangsters hired by the Chinese government, blah, blah, blah.
Now they were referring to you, Caleb, you notorious Chinese gangster, Caleb Maupin.
Right. And it's like, I mean, I didn't see any gangsterism. I didn't see any criminal activity. I saw a lot of Chinese Americans who love their country. They were singing the Internationale. At one point, on the stream, you know, that Sam did, you can hear me singing it in English while they're all singing it in Chinese. That was pretty neat. And, you know, and they were chanting in Chinese. I don't know what they were chanting. Someone said they were chanting like one China, Tsai Ing-wen is a troublemaker, something like that. You know, but they just seem like nice folks, and a lot of older, you know, kind of senior citizen kind of people there who just, you know, are very patriotic, and a lot of Chinese flags. And they also had the best soundtrack, I would say. I mean, they had this speaker that was playing like patriotic Chinese communist songs the whole time. It was very cool. It was very great. And, you know, the police were there. They were constantly negotiating with the police about where to stand and all this. Not the kind of thing gangsters do.
I was just going to say, like, gangsters' favorite pastime is definitely not like negotiating with police over what's okay to do.
Right. And I mean, you know, I mean, they got a sound permit, and at one point the sound permit ended, and then the police like told them they had to turn. I mean, the whole thing was like very clearly done in coordination with the police, in coordination with New York City law. So I really, I mean, whatever. I mean, it's a pretty wild story, but
well, you think that the most racist thing that they would say is like that, you know, it's like would be like accusing you of injecting yourself somewhere where because you're white. Like, you're white, so you shouldn't be at this thing. And you're telling a Taiwanese woman to get out of our country? How racist. But like the most racist thing that actually happened was labeling all these Chinese folks gangsters.
Right. Yeah.
By the Chinese government.
Right. And that's been their response. I mean, because, and I'll tell you the way it went down. This is interesting, right? So she checked in at her hotel at 3 p.m. We
Mm-hmm.
were not there at 3 p.m. I had work and other people had something. So we got there around like 5:30 or so. And
Mm-hmm.
then the big crowd of Chinese folks had already left. Right. And she was already in the hotel. And we got to the hotel and the police, the NYPD had blocked off like the whole street, like 2 whole blocks were blocked
Mm-hmm.
off just for her to be there. And this is like ridiculous. We're not supposed to recognize her as a head of state. Do they even do that for the president? Do they block off 2 whole? I mean, it was like she was getting superstar treatment from the police. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was in Midtown Manhattan at rush hour, blocking off 2 big blocks, is a big deal. So we get there and we're at the right hotel. We can tell we actually went to the wrong hotel. We heard it was an Intercontinental Hotel. So we went to the one at Times Square. It clearly wasn't happening there. So then we went over to the other one, the Barclays Hotel. That's where she was staying. So we went there and there's a bunch of reporters hovered around the door, right? But the protesters are gone. There's like a little tiny Chinese flag on the floor and like a police cage is set up. So you can tell there had been a protest there before. So it's like, okay. But they're all hovered around the door, and I'm thinking, okay, so and I pulled out my bullhorn, and I said to our guys, we got our banners, and I just said, let's just go, let's just start, because I expected they would shut down my bullhorn as soon as possible, but I guess they didn't. They didn't shut it down, so I figured I would just start agitating. They would film, and like we were outside the hotel, whatever. And then I guess. The police didn't shut me down because the sound permit that the Chinese folks had gotten was still in effect. Okay. So that area was still designated for sound. So thank you, Chinese folks, for getting a sound permit. You enabled me to do that unintentionally. Right. But that's why the police didn't immediately tell me to stop my bullhorn, is because their sound permit was still in effect.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I just started agitating, and then out of nowhere, she walks out and I'm on the bullhorn and all the press is taking pictures of us and all of that. It was pretty wild, and what was also pretty interesting is that there were a couple like security kind of people. They weren't police, but they were like security people that were on hand. And afterwards, they came up to us and agreed with us. And they said, yeah, we don't need a new war. One guy had been in Afghanistan. He had fought in Afghanistan. And he said, yeah, I don't want to see a new confrontation. Why were we over there in Afghanistan? He was against it. And there were other people that gave us thumbs up and agreed with us simply on the anti-war grounds. People don't know anything about Taiwan or China or whatever. They just don't want a new war. And they can tell that this is escalating to something dangerous. And I thought that was pretty neat to see how many like normal average people were on our side. There were a couple like groupies who were coming up to us and saying Taiwan is not China or whatever. And, I mean, it's like, well, I say, okay, I'm not going to argue with you about that, but why don't the United States stay out of it? How about that? Why is it our business in the United States to be piling weapons onto an island and trying to have a fight with the People's Republic? That's not our business. So that was a pretty neat thing. I had my confrontation with Sa Ing-wen, and, it was filmed. The AFP news agency from France filmed it and released it. And it's so annoying. In their video of it, they put out, they said Sa Ing-wen leaves her hotel amid chants and heckling or whatever by pro-Beijing protesters. Well, I'm not a pro-Beijing protester. No. I was talking about America. I was saying, stop selling war in the United States. I was not coming at it from pro-Beijing.
Well,
ways. That's
China,
what I said.
China is not our enemy, is not saying China should be in charge. It's saying like, and to say China is not our enemy is also in the interest of the American people. It's not like, I mean, in its own way, it's just not anti-China, but it's not pro-China. It's basically saying like, hey, it would be a bad thing for one superpower to get into a large-scale war with another. And that's beneficial for the American people. Like when you say China is not our enemy, you're saying we shouldn't be starting a large-scale escalation with the other foremost superpower,
Right. I mean, it was pretty wild. And so, then last night we were able to meet with those, be at the same place as those Chinese folks. And apparently her team was so rattled. They like snuck her in the back entrance. All the media was waiting for her. All the paparazzi and all that was waiting for her. She never came through the front because they were worried about another moment. And, the fact that, every time she's ever been anywhere, she gets protested by, by folks that are sympathetic to China. But the fact, usually she kind of likes that. She walks past them and they take pictures of her. It's like, look how brave she is or whatever. But she was so rattled by me, Mr. White American, yelling at her with a bullhorn and calling her out for trying to start a war, that she has been avoiding her little, like, paparazzi photo op walk, which I think is pretty wild. And then they usually don't put out a press release saying it's Chinese gangsters, but I think they did that this time just because of what we did. I think they were really, really rattled. They didn't expect what we did. And the reaction on Chinese social media has been massive. And like, this is why CPI exists. I wish people could understand this. This is why the Center for Political Innovation exists, is to do stuff like this, to bring anti-imperialist politics to the American people, to kind of represent the forgotten voices of the American people that don't want a new war, and to present politics in a way that, like, how could you disagree with what I said? Someone has come from a country we don't even recognize, or it's not a country, but the government of Taiwan that we don't recognize is coming to the United States to have a backroom meeting with all these government officials to talk about, escalating with China. And I'm here saying, on behalf of the American people, I don't want a new war. That's really important. And like the conference that we did with Garland Nixon, with yourself, with Nick Brana from the People's Party, these are important voices. This is important stuff that we're doing.
Well, again, the Summit Against Hypocrisy, that's the whole point. Like the whole Summit for Democracy thing, it's a big load of nonsense, because democracy, as we've said probably a million times throughout the course of this event, democracy from the perspective of the U.S. state is doing what the U.S. state says. And that's why such an anti-China voice comes here to lobby our officials, like, hey, could you make it worse for China? It's like, why would we want to do that? Like, China is, I said it a moment ago, the other, like, big superpower in the world. Like, Russia is a very large country of superpower as well, but China is huge. It's massive. Its economy is ridiculous. And the power that they have militarily, yes, it rivals ours. And you don't even really need, as long as you have nuclear bombs, it doesn't really matter if you have a rival military. Like, there's so much potential for what could go wrong in such a thing. Like, it's amazing, that there aren't more people protesting to this effect who aren't just Chinese folks. Because again, to say China is not our enemy, to say we don't want war with China, isn't necessarily a thing where we're saying, like, America is bad. I would never say America is bad. I'd say the U.S. state is bad, but I would never say America is bad. I just don't want to see nukes or troops weaponized in either direction.
Yeah. I'm really excited for your documentary, because you're a guy that you come out of comedy. That's kind of what you do. And there were a lot of very funny moments. I know we don't want to give them away too much, but there were some very comical moments in the planning that I think our audience is going to enjoy.
I agree. I also like, I think that comedy is a good way to sort of relate to people, that it creates a shorthand almost immediately. If you can get a good, like, joke and sort of supports your point, people are more willing to listen, I think, to the nitty gritty of something. And I think that, again, we have so many people who see these events who don't understand what goes into them, and don't understand the type of planning, the type of organizing, all of these things required to bring one of these things together and just happen, let alone have people show up and watch it or film it and show other people. Just to have it happen at all it's a fight, essentially. And between it being funny, between it being human, I think that more people need to see that end of it, and I'm excited for people to.
Yeah, and that also, on the one hand, we do take ourselves very seriously. We wear suits at our conferences and all that. But at the other hand, we're not, like, too uptight. We have a sense of humor about these things. We can kind of laugh at ourselves a little bit. We can kind of smile. We can be lighthearted and try to be pleasant. I mean, being around people is really important. There's been such an effort to isolate people amid the pandemic and the lockdowns. And that's why we do these events, is to kind of build the community of anti-imperialists.
Yeah. I mean, I even I didn't really do like a major presentation. I kind of just went up and cracked a few jokes to try to get people exactly what I was talking about a moment ago. Like, I think it's important to make some jokes so that people understand that you're a human being and stuff like that. I didn't really, I sort of introduced a lot of people, but before I did, I made some jokes and I talked about how much social isolation is going on.
Yes.
That was probably the one part I didn't joke about, if I remember right. Other than I said it would have been a lot worse if 6 or 7 people showed up and I was saying all this stuff. But yeah, it's we need desperately to be doing these things in a context of, hey, real people exist. They're with you. You're with them. There is an investment among human beings, not only in the cause but in each other, that is important for us to realize. There's just between we were talking about this sort of rip-off rally, I guess, the the summit to
Whoa.
rip off the summit against hypocrisy.
Right. I'm pulling up your documentary channel. It made some noise. Ignore that. Sorry about that, folks.
No problem.
Yeah.
But I lost my train of thought there.
So sorry. Yeah, I wanted to link
problem.
your very important documentaries in the chat,
Right.
and then your
Right.
trailer just started blaring.
Sorry,
So
I'm sorry
keep
about
talking. Keep talking. Sorry about that.
But yeah, we need people to understand like the social investment of it as well. Like, there's so much talk about like idealism versus materialism. And this is a very important conversation to have. Having a dialectical materialist view is very important. But people don't emotionally resonate with it as much. And if you're going to make something where people emotionally resonate with something and not get into idealist territory, they have to have other people. Like that's essentially how you you take the insights that you get from the materialist view and you have a community of people that's able to put their heads together, understand it, and respond to it in a way that it takes one side of that dialectical struggle.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of brings us to this super chat we got here. Welcome to Fun with Flags with CPI. The flag ceremony, I noticed that every time we do one of those, it gets tweeted out and people are like, oh my God, this is awful. You're not there.
The fascists. Why don't we get the fascists out of the White House?
Right. And it's just, they don't get it, but it's like, it was very emotionally moving. If you go and watch now on the CPI YouTube channel, like Elizabeth had a very strong emotional response to that. So did a lot of people in the audience. I mean, it hits you in a different way. There's some things that are just not meant to go online. And also symbolism is really important, and having group activities and the power of song and music. I mean, these are things we think a lot about. We're trying to have a powerful emotional event. But I wanted to mention it. Your documentary will go up on your documentary channel. I linked it here in the chat. Very important documentaries. You have your regular YouTube channel, but you also have your very important documentaries channel. And that's where your degrowth documentary is up there. And I believe you're working on another piece. Do you want to share about that, or is that a surprise?
Well, no, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm in the middle of working on. It's a documentary I'm calling Marx for Sale, and it's about how. I mean, I just talked about idealism and materialism. A lot of it is rooted in the difference between these things. And online Marxism, we talked about Luna Oy earlier, Vijay Prashad, these are supposedly Marxists. But what they've really done is been able to find a way to transform what appears to be a historical materialism into an idealism, into a thing that they can sort of commodify and sell and create consumer demographics that masquerade as communities, so that they're able to have these masses of people that sort of just, endlessly consume the things that they put out, rather than, we put out, and I'm actually pretty harsh on myself in this documentary. I think that content itself isn't necessarily revolutionary or it's not political action. It's just information, and whether or not it figures into people's thinking when it comes to actually doing those things. Like, it's not to say that content itself is totally unimportant, but it's not revolutionary. It's content. It's making money for Google if it's on YouTube. It's being mediated and held back a lot. But the whole idea is essentially, how do we turn dialectical materialism into idealism? How do we make this into no more than the anarchy shirts that are hanging in Hot Topic? You know, that's basically the point of the documentary. And I think that it's going to be a really interesting one for people. And I think it's probably going to make a lot of people calling themselves Marxists very mad at me, but that's not new.
Good. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm really excited for that documentary. I'm also very excited for the documentary you got coming up about our recent summit, which was a smashing success. So I guess I'll ask you, is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we go?
Yeah. Go to Amazon.com and buy Woke Ouroboros, my book.
Yeah, it's a great book.
It's gotten a very good response. People, I mean, it sort of started really slow, but it's been building. Like it's gradually selling more and more and getting reviews and stuff. It's one of those ones where I'm an independent, publisher or documentarian or whatever. I don't really have money to push the stuff that I make. So as people are reading it and sort of leaving reviews, they're emailing me. I get some people on Twitter saying things. People are calling it a very well-reasoned and balanced view at what wokeness is that doesn't fall for the reactionary traps of criticizing wokeness. And I'm excited to have gotten that response, and I hope everybody here reads it.
Yeah, it is a good book. It gets my full endorsement. We had a chat about it when you first published it. People should go watch that because it's a very, very important book. And, my book that everyone at the conference got a free copy of, it's got a few reviews on Amazon already, and people are enjoying it. So
we did an interview about that I'm assuming you're going to post on your channel probably sometime whenever it's done.
Yeah. We had a good chat about it. At some point we'll post that. So very good. All right. Well, folks, stay tuned. Go subscribe to the CPI YouTube channel. Go subscribe to Very Important Documentaries and Peter Coffin's channel. A lot of content is going to be coming out pretty soon. But the important thing is it's not just about content. It's about building a real community of resistance and solidarity. Anti-imperialism is growing in the United States right now. People are hungry for our message. So thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody.
Happy to be here. It was also great hanging out with you last week.
Yeah. It was fun.
We were busy as hell, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you and I and all the others, we could talk all night, I think. We had so much to share.
Too much. I don't think we got enough sleep at all.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Peter, and thanks, everybody.